this tutorial is about balancing equations. Now before we actually go ahead and start balancing equations, you have to be able to identify formulae and be able to understand them quite well. Okay, so before I actually start, I'd like you to go ahead and fill in this table. Now what I want you to do is identify how many of each atom we've got in each compound. Okay, so I'll do the first one for you. So I've got CaCl2, I've got 1 calcium and 2 chlorine atoms. Okay, so pause the video and have a go at doing the other two on your own. Right, hopefully you got those right. Let's have a look at the answers. Okay, now if you did not get those right, you have to go back and see where you went wrong. Right, you will not be able to go ahead and balance the equations unless you get these correct. If you got them right, well done. Let's move forward onto our first example. Okay, we've got calcium and we've got hydrogen chloride and we've got calcium chloride and hydrogen. Okay, so now these are my reactants and my reactants make my products. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm just going to draw out the atoms for my reactants. Sorry, let's draw out the atoms. Here I've got 1 calcium atom on its own. I've got 1 hydrogen atom and 1 chlorine atom. Now, as I said, this side, let what's on the left hand side make what's on my right hand side. So here I've got calcium chloride being made. Okay, so it's calcium chloride, and we make hydrogen. Now, if you look more carefully, I should have 2 chlorine atoms and 2 hydrogen atoms. Now, I can't just add them on at the end like this. You just can't do that. Okay, it doesn't make any sense. All right, where did those atoms come from? I must have had 2 hydrogen chlorides to have started with. All right, I must have had 2 of them. Now, that makes more sense. Okay, and this is actually a balanced equation. That's what balanced equations do. They make sense. Okay. So let's have a look at another example. Now, going a little bit more detail. I'm not going to draw out all the atoms again because it's just time consuming. Okay, what we do instead is we identify what we have. Okay, so we've got magnesium, we've got oxygen, we've got magnesium oxide. Okay, and I've got my arrow here. Now, what I'd like to do is I will identify which elements I've got in my equation. Now I've got 2 elements and those are magnesium and oxygen. Okay, so I'm going to write them down underneath my arrow like this, and the next step to do is to identify how many of each element you've got on either side of the arrow. So on this side of the arrow I've got 1 magnesium, I've got 1 magnesium on this side of the arrow. Okay, on the left I've got 2 oxygens and I've got only 1 oxygen on this side. Okay, so my magnesiums are actually balanced, but my oxygens are not. Okay, so that's what I've got to look at. And the first thing you ask yourself is, what must I multiply this side by in order to get 2? Alright, what must I multiply 1 by in order to get 2? And the answer is 2. Now, there are some rules in balancing equations, as always. You cannot add small numbers. For example, you cannot add a small 2 here. Okay, like I've got here. You're not allowed to do that. You just can't. Okay, and you cannot split up this molecule. This is a compound. You can't put a 2 in between them. All right, it's not allowed. So what can you do? You can only put big numbers, and that must go in front of the whole entire molecule. Okay, now I'm going to put brackets around as well. Now this 2 just means I've got 2 lots of MgO. That's all it means. All right. Now this 2 means I've got to multiply everything by 2 that is in the bracket. Okay, so I've got 1 magnesium, I need to multiply it by 2, cross it out, put 2. I've got 1 oxygen, I need to multiply that by 2 as well. Okay, so you multiply. Now my oxygens are now balanced, however my magnesiums are not. Okay, so what must I multiply this side by in order to get 2? Okay, nice and easy. I've got to multiply it by 2. So I get my big number and put it in front of the magnesium. Now I don't need to worry about this oxygen because they haven't actually chemically combined. They're separated by a plus sign. So it's just magnesium that's multiplied by 2 here. Alright, so 2 multiplied by 1 is 2. Okay, now I've got 2 magnesiums and I've got 2 oxygens on either side. Okay, that is a balanced equation. All right, now don't forget to rub out your brackets afterwards. Okay, I want you to pause the video and have a go at doing this one on your own. Right, hopefully you got the right answer. Okay, it's 2. If you haven't, let's see, we went wrong. If you have, go ahead, move forward into the next few questions. Okay, so let's identify the elements. So we've got zinc, hydrogen, and chlorine. Now, how many of each one do I have on either side? Okay, should be able to do this quite well. Now, zinc is balanced, however, my hydrogen and my chlorine are not. Okay, so what must I multiply each one by in order to have 2? I need to multiply it by 2. Okay, so I'm going to put a big 2 in front, put a bracket round. Okay, to remember that everything is multiplied by 2 inside the bracket. So I now have 2 hydrogens. I now have 2 chlorines. Okay, now is it balanced? I've got the same number on either side. Yes, that is a balanced equation. Okay, pause the video and have a go at doing this one. Right, this is a little bit more tricky. Let's have a look at the answers. Okay, if you got that right, well done. Now move on to the next few questions. If you haven't, let's see we went wrong. Okay, now underneath the arrow, write down all the elements that we have. We've got carbon, hydrogen, and oxygen. Identify how many of each one we've got on either side. Okay, my carbons are balanced, hydrogen is not, and oxygen is not. Now, I think it's going to be easier to tackle the hydrogen first, so that's what I'm going to do. I've got 2 on the side and 4 on the side. Right, what must I multiply 2 by in order to get 4? I need to multiply it by 2. Okay, so here's hydrogen, I need to multiply it by 2. Remember, big numbers only, that is the rule. Okay, put my bracket round to remember that everything is multiplied by the 2. So let's have a look. 2 multiplied by 2 is 4. So cross this out and put 4. I've got a 1 here, 1 oxygen. 1 multiplied by 2 is 2. Now I've got another 2 oxygens here. Okay, so you need to add these on. You need to add them together because they're on the same side of the arrow. So 2 plus 2 makes 4. Alright, now my hydrogens are now balanced. However, my oxygens are not. Okay, I've got 2 this side and 4 this side. So what must I multiply this side by in order to get 4? Okay, the answer is 2. Okay, 2 multiplied by 2, and that gives me 4. Okay, that is a balanced equation. Don't forget to rub out your brackets when you have finished. Okay, now balance these, please. Pause the video and have a go. Right, let's look at the answers. Right, I hope you got those right. If you haven't, you need to go back into the video and see where you went wrong. Okay, if you did, well done.